Welcome and hello all. I would like to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Mohamed Heiba. And Mr. Mohamed Heiba is a professional solutions architect with over 10 years of experience in IT, cloud computing, and agile product management. Currently, Mohamed is a senior DevOps consultant at Amazon Web Services. The floor is yours, Mr. Mohamed. Kindly unmute.
Yeah. Sorry. Hello, everybody. It's Mohamed Heiba. Sorry, I was just choosing a more suitable background. Hope you can all hear me and see me. Ola or Fatima, can you confirm that you can see me? Okay, great. All right, I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's take this away. Open PowerPoint. Right. So, can you all see my screen now? Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
All right, great. All right, so today we're going to talk about actually two very important topics. We're going to talk about blue-green deployments, and we're going to talk about CDK. So these are very advanced topics in the main topic of DevOps. So if you're aware of DevOps is the topic where you do the whole development operations, continuous integration and deployment, continuous testing. This is where development touches with infrastructure. This is where the developer is able to develop applications and ship them, and then these applications are then monitored, released to production, and so on. So the whole software development lifecycle, this is where it gets in touch with the infrastructure and operations and monitoring and deployment and so on. So that's DevOps in general, right? Now, blue-green is a very advanced topic, and CDK is also a very advanced topic. This is the Cloud Development Kit, which is infrastructure as code. So this is very similar to Terraform, if anyone here is aware of Terraform. So we're actually going to talk about both of them. We're going to talk about how blue-green deployment is done, and what's it used for, and we're going to talk about what is CDK and why should we use it and so on. So without further ado, let's jump into the agenda. If anyone has any questions, I'm opening the chat. So at any time, please make sure to write your questions straight away. All right. So first of all, we're going to explain what is blue-green deployment. Why do we use blue-green deployment? What are the different types of blue-green deployment? We'll provide sample architectures. We'll provide some best practices considerations around blue-green deployment. And then we'll talk a little bit about the infrastructure as code. And if we have time at the end, we'll do a demo, but these are obviously two very big topics. So I hope that, we are able to finish them within the hour. All right, so let's get started. What is blue-green deployment, right? So in a nutshell, blue-green is a new technique for releasing new application versions, okay? So the way we release at the moment, if you allow me to diagram it, I always like to diagram it. Can you, I hope you can all see my screen. Right, so let's start by, GitHub, right? So you're a developer, and today you're going to push your code to GitHub, all right? Now, what happens next? What happens next is that, as part of DevOps, right, you use code pipeline, right? And what code pipeline does is that it has triggers. So whenever you push code to GitHub, right, code pipeline actually gets triggered, and it starts triggering something called code build. Okay. Right. So now that code build has been, what does code build do? Code build starts building your code. So if your code is, Java or JavaScript or, Python, Laravel, PHP, whatever framework you're using, you need to build the code. So code pipeline actually builds the code, right? Now, when it comes to deployment, you can deploy in so many ways. Let's say we're going to deploy to a container. So to deploy to a container, what we do first is we push the code to ECR, Elastic Container Registry. This is where you save the Docker images, and then you use ECS. You deploy to Elastic Container Service, or you deploy to Kubernetes, whatever it is, right? So a code build would actually take the image from ECR, and it would then push it to ECS, right? And here ECS, let's say, is running on the live environment. This is the prod environment, right? So the production environment. Okay. So this is the normal way, of pushing. You've got source, build, and deploy. 3 stages. Very, very easy. If you want to do some unit testing, if you want to do automated testing, it's all part of the pipeline, right? So what is the problem here, right? What is the problem here? The problem here is, what if there is a bug on the code, in the code? There is a bug in connecting to the database. Let's say, for example, you have a SQL, a SQL database, right? That, your containers connect to, right? MySQL database, or PostgreSQL, or MongoDB, or whatever. What happens if there's a bug in the database connection? Like your code has built fine. I have to deploy, build, then release from the start. Yes, that's normal way. Like you push to GitHub, and then the code build does building, and then it deploys to ECS. So you're saying if a problem happens, you have to rebuild from the start. Yes, but there's a problem here, right? There's a problem here, that to redo everything from fix the code, actually identify the problem, troubleshoot the problem, fix the code, push it to GitHub, get it all deployed again, can take some time. Can take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, can take 1 hour. During this 1 hour, what is happening? All your customers on production are not able to use your application. All your customers have a major downtime. It's a major issue. There's major escalations. And it doesn't have to be something database. It could be any kind of bug. Actually, it doesn't have even to be a bug. What if it's a feature that people do not like, right? You want to test out a new image, a new landing page. You want to test out a new feature. You want to test out a new design, a new, whatever it is in your software. And it turns out that people don't like it, or there's something missing, or they prefer the old version. And the problem here is that you're deploying everything to production straight away. It can happen even if you deployed things, to development first, and then you tested it on development, and then you had to deploy it on production first. Still, these are 2 very different environments. So on development, things might be working fine, but on production, you might be having issues. Our CTO, Werner Rogels, always said, if something can fail, it will fail, right? And to build robust systems, you always have to design for failure, meaning that you have to design that, what if any failure happened, right? How can I mitigate it? So, when companies launch a new product, right? What do? They launch it first in one city, and then they go to another city, and then they start expanding it regionally, and then worldwide. Why is that? Because they want to test first. They want to test against a small group of people first. And this is where blue-green comes into place, right? So with blue-green, what happens is that, I'll explain it in a nutshell, that you have an initial environment, which is, we will call this the blue one, right? We'll call this the blue one. So let me just put any rectangle here, just to show that it's blue, right? So this will be the blue one. This is where, all my users, my loyal users, my active users, this is where they are all, using my application. They're, this is where they're interacting with my website. They're having a great time. They love my product. Everything is great, right? But then I want to release version 2. So this is version 1. So I'll call that, this is prod environment version 1.0, right? Now I want to release version 2, right? This is the new upgrade, the new version, and I don't want to release version 2 directly and get rid of version 1. And because, as I said, if any problem happened in the deployment, if any problem happened in the environment, in the features, anything whatsoever, right, it will cause me to lose all my users, right? What if I have 1 million users? Will all 1 million users be subject to version 2 straight away? This is what I don't want. So in blue-green deployment, you make version 1 blue, and then you make a second environment, which is also prod. This one is V2, and this one is green. Okay, so let's take it bit by bit. Right, so this one is the green version, and again, you're deploying, from the new build. So everything so far is sort of the same. It's the same deployment process. It's just that this time you're deploying to a different environment, right? And okay, can anyone tell me what's the advantage in doing that? I'm here on the chat if anyone wants to write anything. So the major advantage in this is using second version is optional. Exactly. So it's not just optional. We can always go back to version 1. That's a very, very good answer. What happens is that I will only take some of my users. So here I just want to, maybe take only one guy, right, and make him use version 2. And then I'm going to take another guy, right, and make him also use version 2. And then gradually, bit by bit, I'm going to take some of the people from version 1 and redirect them to version 2, right? And I'm doing this bit by bit, and I'm making sure that at every stage, everything is working fine. If I'm connecting to the database connection is fine. If I have features, everyone loves my features. So I'm making sure that version 2 is working perfectly fine. The features are great. There are no bugs. There are no major issues. There are no critical failures. And bit by bit, I'm taking everyone from version 1 and making them use version 2. Okay, so this is why it's called blue-green. The blue one is the old stable one. The green once everyone is happy with version 2, now I am now, I gradually rolled it out to my users. So first I rolled it out to 5% of my users, and then 10%, and then 20%, until I was 100% sure that everything is fine. I can do this over a week. I can do this over 2 weeks. I can do it over 24 hours. I can do it over 1 hour. So I have full control, right? But the most important thing is that I only subject only a very small percentage of my users to the new version, so that if any problem happened, I can easily and in 1 second, get them all to connect back, to version 1, right? So I can easily roll back. This is the most important part, easiness of rollback, and also makes the impact of any problem very, very small. You're only going to affect 5% of your users, right? So what happens after everything is successful? Well, the green one now becomes blue, and the blue one is deleted because you no longer need it, right? So, and everyone is now using version 2. Now, when you have version 3, right, you get another version. Now, this is version 3, right? And now this one, right, becomes the green, and so on, 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 and so on. So there are so many advantages in doing this way. right? They're saying that, yeah, it's a very smooth transition. It's like a beta version 100%, right? Some even call it canary deployment. Most people say, do not deploy to production before the weekend. So in Egypt, for example, do not deploy on Thursday afternoon, because if something went wrong in the production environment, then you're going to have to work in the weekend, right, to fix it. But with blue-green deployment, you can deploy on Thursday afternoon. Why? Because you actually don't have to switch your users to the new environment straight away, right? You can keep them on the old environment, and only on Sunday afternoon, you start switching some of them to the new environment. So it's a very slow and smooth transition, right? Number two, what if something wrong happened? So let's get back to our previous version. So what if something wrong happened here? As I mentioned, right? First of all, I will switch all my users back to version 1, which was working perfectly fine, right? So everyone's now connected to version 1 back again. This is all managed via load balancer or DNS. Things are perfect. And then I have version 2 here still intact. What does this mean? It means I can debug it. It means I can troubleshoot on it. I can see, what's happening, right? I can, see why it failed. Why did my users, when they start using it, something went wrong? So I have the environment. I'm not replacing it. I have it so I can actually test on it. It's a replica of the live environment, which I can test on it. I can see the full logs and I can debug things live. So this, in a nutshell, is blue-green deployment. It can be done in so many ways. It can be done with DNS or containers. It can be done with serverless Lambda functions. It can be done in any sort of deployment tool you want, or any code pipeline, or any CI/CD pipeline you want. But the main thing is that you need to have a blue-green deployment capability in order to automatically do that. So actually, all what I've explained is actually done automatically. So in AWS, we have code deploy service, right? So code deploy actually manages that whole blue-green deployment, and I can actually show it to you, right? So this is code deploy. So actually what happens is that, code build sends the instruction to code deploy. Code deploy starts creating a new environment. There's a load balancer. So usually you have something like, this load balancer there, and the load balancer starts, load balancing people between the old one and the new one. So what does this mean? It means that you actually don't need to do all of this manually. It's all done for you. And you even tell code deploy even instructs the load balancer to actually start shifting 5% of the traffic, 10%. All of this is configured and it's done automatically. So in AWS, we help you to do it without any headache, without any extra development, without any complexity. It's all done for you out of the box, and I will actually show it to you. So now you've got a very good idea about blue-green. Let's quickly go through the slides, right, and see it in more details, right? So we understood that, it's a technique for releasing new application versions, right? It reduces downtime. So as I showed you, version 1 is running, and then version 2 is running in parallel. So version 1 actually doesn't go down. Version 1 keeps being up and running while you smoothly transition people from version 1 to version 2. Right? You use a cloned environment. As I showed you, version 2 is a clone of version 1. It's a clone infrastructure. Obviously, the software is different because it's a new version, but the infrastructure is the same, right? So you use a cloned environment to first deploy application, and it's an isolated test environment, right? So if I want to test things first before I start directing my users to version 2, I can test things first on version 2 before I direct users, and even if a problem happened after redirecting users back to version 1, right? And it's a very, very easy rollback. So if any problem happened, in 1 second, I can redirect everyone back to version 1, and I have version 2 to test things on it and see why things failed there, right? So first, as I told you, the blue environment is the original version. This is the stable version. The green environment, this is the new version. This is the fresh version, right? And then if the tests are successful, you do some tests first on the green environment. If everything is successful, you start shifting traffic from blue to green. If things are not successful, you roll back from the green to the blue, right? So this is an example architecture. So here we've got a load balancer. This is Route 53. All my users are going to the prod environment. This is the blue one. So it's the stable one. So initially, production traffic is served by the blue environment. We're connecting to DynamoDB database or whatever database we want, and everything is working fine. This is version 1.0, right? Now I introduce version 2. So it's a clone of version 1, but now it has my new software, version 2. I use code build and code deploy, right? And then now this is the fresh green environment, right? It's newly spawned and it's a new version, right? And then I do some smoke test and user acceptance testing. So even before directing any user to the green environment, I do my tests first. Let's make sure everything is working fine. Let's make sure the database is working fine. Let's make sure the data schemas are fine. The code is working perfectly, and so on. So there are two advantages here. I think you already got it, but just to make sure that you get it. Number one is that I can test everything on the green environment first without affecting my people that are working on version 1. So all my users are working on version 1, and then I'm testing in a separate environment. Imagine if I have deployed everything on the same prod environment. I won't be able to do any tests because my users will connect to it straight away, right? They're going to connect to it straight away. So I cannot do tests while they are connecting to the same environment, while they are trying to use the same application. As a software developer, I cannot test something if I've got 100,000 users trying to use it, right? So imagine any of the big startups in Egypt. Imagine if they want to deploy a new version, right? But they've got millions of users, and all users get directed to the same environment. It would be chaotic, right? So first of all, I can do my tests here. I can make sure everything is fine, the database is fine, the data connection is fine, and then once everything is fine, I redirect the traffic to the new environment, right? The new environment is now blue because now it is stable, and the old environment, I can then delete it because I no longer need it, right? I can actually keep it for 1 day. I can keep it for 1 week. I can keep it for 1 month, just to make sure that if any problem happened, I can redirect my users back to version 1.0 in seconds, right? So this is blue-green deployment. Now, with Canary means that you only tested against a small percentage of users, right? So Canary means that you've got your blue, which is version 1, and green, which is version 2, and you direct only, let's say, 10% of the traffic, right? So 10% of the traffic will go to, the new green version, and then 20%, and then 30%, and so on, until the point where, you are fully satisfied that everything is working fine. Then you can shut off, you can direct 100% of the traffic and shut off the old version. I've got a question here. You mean here just for modification in the application, DNS can be swapped to previous version if fault occurs? So if the database structure changed from one version to another. So it's not just about database change or data structure, it's about anything. So any bug, any major bug, what if there's any bug in the code that is preventing the code from even running or causing a major issues to user? For example, when they try to load their profile, everything crashes. What if there's a major crash? So it doesn't have to be data structure change or whatever, right? so that's number one. It can be any major bug. Actually, as I mentioned, it doesn't even have to be a bug. Maybe version 2 has a new design and I want to test this new design. I find that people hate it. So I want to redirect everyone back to version 1, right? So it doesn't even have to be a bug or data structure change or data schema change or connection issue. Number 2, you said data DNS can be swapped. So exactly. So it's done via DNS. This is one way of doing it, or it's done via load balancer. So with load balancer, you have here one load balancer that's using the same DNS, but at one point it's directing the traffic to the old environment, and for other people it's directing the traffic to the new environment. So the load balancer can actually do this without even swapping the DNS. Okay, so Dr. Ahmed, I hope that this has clarified it for you, right? Okay, now moving on. Why do we use blue-green deployment? So that's the problem with the traditional in-place upgrades, okay? Number one, it's difficult to conduct testing when live production traffic is in parallel, as I mentioned. Okay, non-isolated environment. So you're deploying version 2 on top of version 1, so it's not isolated, right? There's no clean way of rolling back. If you I'm here talking about the old way, right? In the old way, it's very difficult to roll back because you're gonna have to redeploy version 1 from scratch, and maybe this will take time. It needs other kind of changes in infrastructure. It's not a clean way, right? You have to redeploy version 1 again, and maybe version 1 doesn't deploy anymore. But the good thing about blue green is that version 1 is there. You don't deploy version 2 on top of it. You deploy it in a separate environment, so you always have version 1 running, right? And again, problems with the traditional in-place upgrades, it's very high risk. Imagine if, for example, your application is used in hospitals, right? Your web application is used by hospitals, or your back end is used by patients, and then you had a major issue, right? Because you deployed version 2 and now it has a problem. Okay, so all your users that need to use version 1 cannot use it anymore, right? So that's the problem. That's why you have to reduce the risk. Deploy it to a separate environment in order to make sure that everyone can use version 1 pretty fine, and then slowly you start transitioning them to version 2 to make sure that everything is working perfectly. Obviously, in the traditional way, there's a very small window to debug. You can hardly debug things right? You have to make a maintenance window. So you have to tell your users that, oh wait, we're gonna have a maintenance window. It's gonna be on Friday at 10 p.m. or whatever, and you're gonna have to do it at a time where people are not using your app. You have to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and stuff like that, or maybe 12 midnight, and and start doing the deployment. That's the traditional way. It impacts SLA. So every time you deploy, if you have a downtime of even 1 hour and you're deploying, once a week, that's 4 hours a month. So maybe you have an SLA with the client that you need to have ensure 99.99% availability, for example. You won't be able to achieve that. And one of the problems as well is that you're using the same underlying resources for the newer versions. So basically, if you're deploying version 2 on top of version 1, this is the exact same infrastructure. So that's not, it's the exact same hardware. So again, that's not a good thing, because maybe, for version 2, you want bigger hardware or smaller hardware. Maybe for version 2, you want to change something. You want to add a different database. You want to add a different component, right? So it's very important that when you deploy version 2, you deploy it on a separate hardware that is compatible with version 2, right? So the advantage in blue-green is that it addresses all of these issues, right? And it offers options of canary-based deployment, so you can have like 5%, 10%. You don't have downtime because version 1 is running in parallel to version 2. So your customers don't even notice any downtime, zero downtime. Reduce blast radius. So this is why I told you, when you don't launch to your 1 million user in one go, even if there are 50,000 users. You don't launch everything in one go. one go, right? You launch it to, 5%. If a problem happened, at least, the blast radius is very, very small, right? Now you can optimize the resources for the new version. So maybe for version 2, you need less hardware, right? You need less, less capacity. So now you can utilize this, these resources for the newer versions. And also, even if your version 1 is using 10 EC2 machines, and for version 2, you don't have to launch 10 EC2 machines for version 2. You can launch one EC2 machine and have only 10% of users, and then launch a second EC2 machine to have the second, 20% of users, and so on. And the EC2s that you launch in the new version, you take them out from the old version, right? So even the switch in EC2 is gradual, right? So you don't have to launch 10 EC2 machines in the new version and have 20 EC2 machines running at the same time. No, you can actually have it gradual. So as I mentioned, you start launching machines in the new version bit by bit, and you start removing them from the old version bit by bit, right? Here you have a traffic failover. So you can scale out the green environment and scale in the blue environment. So the green environment starts scaling out, starts increasing in capacity, and the blue environment starts scaling in. You start, decreasing in capacity. So you can do this smoothly, not in one shot. And this is mostly carried out for front end and middleware services. Actually, it's carried out for everything. Backend services, middleware, front end. Obviously, it's not suitable for mobile applications, but even for mobile applications, Google Play, for example, you can roll out the changes gradually. So even for Google Play, there's a configuration to roll out things gradually. So again, it helps to catch issues early on, fix them, and then the rest of your users doesn't see these errors, right? And in case of failed deployment, you are able to restore everyone safely as a highest priority. You are able to retain the version 2 reproduced failed state in production. So now you have a version 2 failed, right? So first of all, everyone's now on version 1. Everything is back to working normally fine. And then on version 2, you have it there. You can check the logs, you can test something there, see what happened wrong, see what failed, and so on. And you can debug why it failed, right? And then you can also in blue-green, you can have automated and manual rollbacks. So you can actually code deploy, can create version 2 environment, start automatically running tests. And if it finds that the tests are not working or the application is not launching correctly on version 2, it can automatically redirect everyone back to version 1 without even you doing anything, without even you touching anything, right? So this is the very good advantages in blue-green deployment. So I'll stop here. Does anyone have any questions on blue-green? I can switch you back to the diagram just for you to remember the diagram. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask about blue-green deployment before I move ahead to CDK? Any questions so far? Anyone interested? Okay. Everything is clear. We all now understood, never deploy everything in one shot to production, always use, code deploy. Let me show you a very quick demo straight away. So just 1 second. Obviously, we all know that demos, they tend to fail more than they succeed. So if anything failed in the demo, don't hold me accountable. It's just a demo. All right, so let's go on to code pipeline. Right, sorry. And let me also open code deploy. And also I've got something here which is Cloud9, which is my development environment on the cloud. So here I've got the blue-green pipeline. You know, the blue-green pipeline, it takes code from code commit repository. So code commit is like GitHub. And then it builds the Docker image using code build, and then it deploys it to ECS in a blue-green fashion using code deploy. Okay, so it's 3 steps: source, build, deploy. Hope you're all, hope you're all excited to see what's coming next. Now, I'm going to log into my, development environment. So this is, it doesn't have to be Cloud9. Obviously, you can be coding from Visual Studio Code or WebStorm or Visual Studio or JetBrains, Intel IJ, Android Studio, whatever it is, whatever your development environment is, right? Right. Okay, let's reload it. Okay, so here I'm gonna say, hello, Climathon. This is version 3. Okay, and let me show you the previous version. So here's the application. That's deployment. Yeah, I need to go to load balancer. So just 1 second. Right, let me open load balancers. Right, this is the one for blue-green, I hope. Yeah, and this is where's the DNS? That's the DNS name. Right, so my current website, this is version, this is the old one, right? This is the blue version, right? So this is the stable one. It says, hello, LMRA, this is version 2. LMRA is another demo I was doing, okay? So now I changed in the code and call it hello, Climathon, this is version 3, right? So this now, this will be the green, fresh version, okay? Now, all I have to do now is open a terminal and just add everything, git commit, and I'm gonna say deploying, version 3 to demo in Climathon. Okay. So now I did a git commit, and then I'm gonna do a nice git push. And I should be good. Okay. Now let's now watch what will happen. Right. First of all, hopefully soon, the code pipeline starts picking up. So let me refresh it. Sometimes it doesn't show in the UI straight away. Yeah. So here now code commit, or code pipeline started picking up my commit. Okay. So let's give it a second. Yeah, so here it got my code commit, deploying version 3 to demo in Climathon. That's my commit message. And now it's actually building it. So let's actually open code build and see what happens. All right, so code build is like, Jenkins and so on. So with code build, you get to build your code, you get to do automated testing, you get to do a lot of things, right? You get to see logs of what's happening. So now I can see here, it's logging into Amazon ECR, so it's logged into ECR Elastic Container Registry. Now it started to, create the task definition file, building the Docker image, running Docker version command, and it failed. Why did it fail? Because the pull rate limit. It's always Docker. It's always Docker. Okay, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I hope I know how to fix that. Let's see if we can try it again. It's always Docker. I think I need to sort of change the build details. That's why you don't use Docker without logging in in a production environment. See, what's the problem with Docker is that if you do Docker pull without providing an access token or whatever, unfortunately, it will fail because it has a rate limit. And I'm just using the public one, the public API. So the public API has the public API from Docker has a rate limit. So finally here it actually worked. Thanks goodness. I'm lucky. Yeah. So it built my Docker image, and now it pushed it to Docker images container registry. Sorry, it pushed it to ECR, to Elastic Container Registry. So this is where the push happened, right? And then it wrote the image definitions file. So the image definitions file is used by ECS to actually deploy the container, right, to ECS. So if I actually, just to show you, I can go to ECR, and I should find the image there. But also more importantly than ECR, we need to look at code deploy. So now the build succeeded, thankfully, alhamdulillah. And now we need to look at code deploy, right? So code deploy, this is the whole blue-green steps. It's doing everything for me automatically. So first of all, everyone, 100% of the traffic is now on the original version, right? So if I refresh, it's still showing the old one. Hello, LMRA, this is version 2. So it's still showing me version 2, the old one, right? This is the blue one, okay? And now bit by bit, it's deploying the replacement tasks. Task mean containers, right? So bit by bit, it's deploying the replacement containers to the new version, right? This is the green one, okay? So with code deploy, we call them original and replacement. And while we're waiting, we can have a look at ECR, and we can find here that that's the repository name. And this was pushed on 29th of August, which is today, at 4:40 p.m., which is my time, which is 2:20 p.m. your time, I think. So this is the latest version we just pushed. And it's now appearing in Elastic Container Registry, which is like Docker Hub. Okay. So back to code deploy. So yeah, we're still deploying now to the new version. We can actually, yep. So now it's deployed everyone to the new version, and it automatically switched all the traffic to the new one once it made sure that the new version is working fine. And it rerouted all the production traffic to replacement task set. Bear in mind that this is a configuration that I can set. So I can set it to actually deploy in small percentages. But for the sake of a demo, I'm just taking 100% and going to the to the replacement or the green, the fresh new version. So now let's see. Now we can see that hello Climathon, this is version 3, right? So now it switched all the traffic to the new container, right? But if I actually go to ECS, let me actually go to ECS. I can actually roll back here, but I just want to show it to you on ECS first, how it looks. Right, so as you can see in the blue-green, I've got 4 tasks running. Okay, so let's look at the service. All right, let's look at the tasks. So I've got 2 of the old one, which is task definition 9 running, and 2 containers of the new one, which is the version 10 running, right? So I've got them running in parallel. This is very, very important. Obviously, the new one is version 10, and this is where the load balancer is going and so on, which is, says hello Climathon. But, what if I want to roll back? First of all, here I've got 2 options. If everything is working fine, I can just say terminate original task set. So just terminate the old one, right? and it will completely destroy, where was it? It will completely destroy these old ones, these two old ones, it will destroy them, right? My second option is I can say, stop deployment and roll back, meaning remove the new ones and roll back to version 9. Okay, so which one do you want me to do? Do you want me to roll back, or do you want me to terminate the original task set? I'll let you choose. I hope I get an excited audience. Terminate, roll back. Okay, 2 terminate and 1 roll back. I'll wait for a fourth. Okay, termination it is. Okay, so I'll terminate the original task set. Okay, so now it has completed all the steps. It said original instance termination has started. So it's now started terminating them. And if I look now, refresh, let's wait for it. Takes some time. Takes a little bit of time. Let's wait a little bit. Yep. So now it terminated version 9 and only kept version 10. Okay, so version 9 are now terminated, deprovisioned. Okay, and it says deployment, ECS service, whatever. So now it had, it had terminated the old version and kept me the new version, right? I can actually retry the deployment and do so many things. So all of this is done automatically, and it can even be more automated, right? In fact, if it has a timeout that is set for it like 2 hours. So after 2 hours, it would automatically terminate the old one. But you can actually make this timeout 24 hours or 2 weeks or whatever you want, right? And you can make it even less. You can make it 10 minutes. So launch my new version. If everything is working fine, the new service is pinging, everything is working perfectly fine, then simply terminate the old one after 10 minutes, right? So now I have fully demoed to you blue-green deployment. Okay. Now the question is, this is our second topic now. How long did it take me to do all of that? Build this pipeline, build code deploy, build the ECS cluster, build the service, the tasks, connect everything together with the load balancer, with code build, with ECR. Can anyone take a guess? How long did it take me? Here's the load balancer, listeners. Less than a day. Okay, getting closer. So it's less than that. Can anyone guess? Okay, it took me 20 minutes. It took me 20 minutes to build all of that. And you're going to say, wow, maybe you know every button in AWS, so you can do it very quickly. The answer is I didn't have to click on any button. The answer is I did it using infrastructure as code. Now, this is the new revolution in DevOps, right? Is that everything is now built as code, even infrastructure, even load balancers, EC2 machines. You write them as code and then you deploy. Right? So this is the blue-green demo CDK stack. It's called CDK, Cloud Development Kit. And it's one file, 148 lines. This is all I needed. Here I'm telling it, let me zoom in a little bit. Here I am telling it to, create the VPC, create the ECS cluster, create the load balancer, connect the prod listener and the test listener on the load balancer, do the target groups, add the target group to the listeners, same for the test target group, and then create the task definition. Okay, sure, 5 minutes left. Okay, create the task definition, create the ECS service, do the connections, allow it from port 80 and port 8080, create the ECS deployment groups this way, get the code from a code commit repository. All of this is done in code. And I just had to run a command, and it ran for 5 minutes, and it built for me the entire demo. It's like CloudFormation, if you know about CloudFormation, but CDK, you write in Python or TypeScript or Java or C#.NET, and it's much, much better. It's much more easier to read and easier to write. And you have the full programming language capabilities. So you can actually do classes, for loops, inheritance, object-oriented programming. You can reuse modules. And this is where it's creating the entire code pipeline. So I was able to build all of this in 20 minutes. And so can you, right? So I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to see if you have any questions. CDK is obviously a very, very important and a strong topic in infrastructure. It's now called infrastructure as code. So if you've ever used Terraform or something like Terraform, like Plummy or something like that, CDK is now the new, the new kid on the block, and it's very, very agile. It's very smooth. It works perfectly, and it's very, integrated with all features in AWS. So you've got, the whole 180 services there. So you have a lot of capability with CDK, and you can build the entire code, blue-green deployment, or actually any infrastructure you want using CDK. So thank you, everybody. Hope that you've enjoyed this. If you've got any question, please go ahead and ask me straight away. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Osama. Thank you, Mohamed. Thank you all. Hope this was useful. Any other question from anybody? Thank you, thank you, Dr. Samar. All right, I think that's all for me. Thank you so much and have a great day.